welcome to the Gyrl podcast, the show where purpose meets inspiration. Each week, I sit down with incredible guests who open up about their real life journeys, the wins, the setbacks, and the lessons in between. Whether you're navigating career moves, entrepreneurship, or personal growth, you're in the right place. I'm Kyra Mitchell Lewis, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's glow up together. All right, happy Thursday. I hope everyone is doing well. I hope your week is being good and kind to you. All right, so before we get started, if you've been thinking about getting clear on your story this year, if you're thinking this is the year, this is when I'm going to do podcasts, this is when I'm going to take on more speaking engagements, but you're not quite sure on what that story should be, I have a great free resource for you. You should check out the links in the show notes to grab that. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about our guest today. Our guest today is Brittany A. Stevens. She is a partner at Phillips Associates, one of the nation's leading plaintiff-side employment law firms. She represents women facing workplace sexual harassment, discrimination, and retaliation, particularly in power imbalance and high-pressure industries. Known for her compassionate, clear, and action-oriented approach, Brittany helps women understand their rights, protect themselves, and regain control during some of the most vulnerable moments of their careers. So today we're talking knowing your rights, recognizing workplace harassment, and building a safe exit plan with Brittany A. Stevens. So let's grab Brittany and bring her into the show. All right, welcome back, and let's welcome Brittany to the show. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. Excited to have this important discussion today.
Yes, very much so. Well, why don't we get started by having you tell our audience listening or watching who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Brittany Stevens. I am an attorney at Phillips Associates in New York City, and I am an employment discrimination lawyer. So I represent employees, so the plaintiffs who suffer a hostile work environment, or who have been discriminated against or retaliated against at the workplace. So, a lot of my clients have been sexually harassed or discriminated against based on their race, their national origin, their pregnancy, disability, age, or have been terminated because they complained about discrimination.
Mm. Okay, awesome. Well, those are really some heavy things, some heavy topics. And I think sometimes people may not know if something is happening to them, or, sometimes you can be in a workplace and they're like what we might call invisible warning signs, especially as it relates to workplace sexual harassment. Can you talk about what some of those look like? What are things that women often miss or dismiss? And what should they do the moment they recognize those signs?
This happens a lot. A lot of times people call me, and the first thing they say is, I don't even know if I'm being sexually harassed, but let me tell you what's happening. They feel it in their gut. They have a good inclination that something is wrong, but they don't necessarily believe that it rises to the level of, let's say, sexual harassment. Like, for example, not everyone is getting physically assaulted at the workplace. I have a lot of clients who have been, um, either raped or assaulted, and that's like the obvious sexual harassment. But there's a lot of more subtle types of sexual harassment. For example, if there's inappropriate comments that maybe aren't even as overt, but I'll give you an example. I had a client whose boss was texting her just at weird times of the night and day, and it was pretty neutral comments, asking, "Are you watching these TV shows?" But enough to make her feel uncomfortable. And that was kind of the start of what we later realized was like the beginning of almost like a grooming type discrimination pattern. But I tell clients, look, if you're uncomfortable by something your boss or your coworker is doing, that's the first point of reflection, and to either call a lawyer or to complain to HR. because, anyone that's making you feel uncomfortable, whether they're even, touching your body parts in a what they think is a friendly way or making some inappropriate comments, asking you out. I mean, these are all things, especially when, taken together, could be a hostile work environment under the law.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think, like you said, I think it's really important. What you mentioned is that sometimes people just aren't aware, especially because if you think about something like you said, someone texting you, right? Like you work with this person all the time, maybe. And I mean, obviously, sometimes, people are like friendly, at work, and it just starts as like someone, oh, do you watch? Oh, are you watching da da da? But it could be like intrude, like you said, it's like intruding if it's unwanted when you're like, you see the text and you're like, "Oh, I really don't wanna answer that because
Right.
that doesn't seem like I should like, that doesn't seem right." But then you feel like you have to answer it because you're gonna get to work the next day and maybe they're gonna be like, "Well, why didn't you answer my text?"
Right. It's more uncomfortable sometimes if you don't respond and
Right.
dealing with the thought of, okay, will there be repercussions or consequences for me if I don't respond, even
Mhm.
to like the more platonic messaging.
Yeah.
And especially if it's someone's boss. And that's how like the defense builds their case, right? Because they're always saying, well, why was your client responding? Why were they engaging in this like playful
Mhm.
back and forth when, I really know after just doing this that, people go along to just, to have it be it's easier for them sometimes to just go along with things than to deal with
Yeah.
the negative, adverse consequences.
Exactly. Yeah, people go we used to call it in corporate, "Go along to get along."
We still say
And
that.
yeah,
Go
'cause
along
that's
to get along. Yep,
yeah,
yep,
because
that's how
it's
the law
yeah,
says it.
yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did not know that that was, like, a legal thing.
Yeah, yes, and thank
Uh,
goodness it is, right? Because we all get it, right? Like,
it's for sure, yeah. I mean, can think of many times working in corporate where you're just agreeable because you don't want there to be friction, especially when it's with unfortunately, but when it's men in the workplace, and it's like you said, like, we're gonna talk about, like, that imbalance of power, right? So, it's, where let's talk about consent and what that really means when there is a power imbalance, and how can women recognize the difference between like a consensual relationship and a workplace coercion.
mm, yeah, I mean, it's a complicated topic, right? Because for me, in my practice, I really take the position that there really isn't consent when the power dynamic is so large.
Mhm.
I have seen far too many cases where, the high C-suite executive is sexually harassing the executive assistant or their lower level employee. And, my client really feels as if they have no other choice but to go along, similar to what we were just talking about. And they have been in, they feel as if their job is in jeopardy. Um, and depending on how high up these individuals are, their age, there's a good argument to make that really there was never consent, even if it seems as if my client was kind of going along with things at some point. It is a tricky area of the law because, it's always a fight that we have with defense counsel,
Mhm.
particularly if my client is engaging in part in the conduct.
Mhm.
And it's tricky, right? Because to
Yeah.
claim sexual harassment, you have to be offended by the conduct, obviously. And that's always a point of contention that we are having with the other side is that my client wasn't offended. And then we take the argument as that, she was offended. She just couldn't necessarily do anything about it.
Mhm.
But it's a really complicated topic because you think of the obvious response that some women may have where they just object to it, say no, or maybe just walk away. But in reality, that's not always how these things play out.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like you even mentioned, I mean, most women are probably going to feel trapped because they need a job. Like, let's just be honest about it. People have a life and they have a livelihood that they have to maintain. And so a lot of times it's like people who may be experiencing harassment or discrimination just feel like, oh my God, I just need to keep this job. So I don't want to say anything. And it's fear, right? It's fear because, like, yeah, it's not like you don't just walk outside and find a new job tomorrow. So it's not as easy as I know how some people might say, well, why don't you just leave? I mean, I feel like that is a terrible thing for people to say because it's like, why should they leave when they may be and probably are very good at what they do every day. And they went to school just like the person who is probably harassing them in order to have the right to hold the job in the position that they're in. Why should they have to be the one that feels the fear or has to feel like they have to leave? So, Brittany, if there are women out there who, may be going through something like harassment or discrimination, but they feel trapped. What is the first step that they can take to protect themselves while still being able to maintain their livelihood in those jobs?
Mhm. I think documenting is essential, um, for a few reasons. Obviously, it helps corroborate and support your claims. But I also find that women who feel like they have some kind of documentation feel more comfortable complaining to human resources about the conduct because they feel like, okay, well, here I finally have some evidence and maybe they'll believe me.
Mhm.
And it's unfortunate, but it's just a reality. So, I tell clients all the time, like, obviously recordings, text messages, emails, like the stuff in writing is important.
Mhm.
But, making that internal complaint to human resources is so important because you're finally putting the employer on notice about this conduct.
Mhm.
And that protects you, it protects future women. And it gives the company an opportunity to properly handle it. Now, that doesn't take away that, you were already harassed and that maybe a lot of the damage has already been done,
Yeah.
but it does give the employer, an opportunity to fix the problem, maybe terminate the harasser, move people away from each other so that the sexual harassment stops. Obviously that's the goal of complaining internally. I think
Right.
I've seen enough scenarios to realize that complaining to human resources doesn't always benefit my clients. And, there's always the fear of retaliation after you make a complaint, fear that the harasser will find out and, do something to, um, you know, jeopardize your job or your reputation. So, in practice, complaining is helpful because you're putting it in writing, but I very much understand the difficulties and the challenges, of coming forward with a complaint.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my follow-up is what happens most times with HR? Like, have you found that they are receptive to actually like make a move to do something to fix it? Or do you find that a lot of times your clients have to then become your clients because they did nothing?
Right. I mean, I don't like to make like a blanket statement that all companies and human resources do
Right.
the wrong thing because there's certainly a lot of companies that take proper remedial action, address the situation, investigate it, and make it stop. Um, but I have a lot of people call me because they complain themselves. They weren't even thinking about having a lawyer. And then the way that the company handles the investigation is just such a um improper investigation in so much that my clients are not believed, their witnesses aren't talked to, they are made to feel as if they are now the problem. So I think companies often get this part wrong. I think a lot of people want to feel as if they're coming forward, they're being heard, and that they're being
Right.
believed, and that their complaints are being taken seriously.
Mhm.
And companies hide behind this. confidential investigation process where there is very little transparency made to my clients. Um, and things could get dragged out, or maybe my client is the one that's now moved away from
Right.
their initial job or put out on paid leave, which is not anything that is advantageous for my client because now she's not in the office, missing out on opportunities. So this part of the process is often when I get a lot of calls from clients because they
Okay.
realize that HR is not protecting them, and that HR is really there for the company.
Yeah. Okay. No, I appreciate you going into that. And yes, like I agree with you. Not every company handles it this way, but we're looking at the side of like maybe when they don't handle it
Right.
properly, how can people get help? Now, what do you wish every woman knew about pregnancy discrimination and retaliation? And what rights do most women have that they don't realize they already have?
I think that most people don't realize that protections happen obviously while you're pregnant, right? You are entitled to accommodations to attend your doctor's appointments. I have clients who need certain restrictions, like they're not able to lift a certain amount of weights, or they need to sit down more often. But then there's also the accommodations that happen after the baby is born as well. I have women who need some time to pump, right? Some lactation
Mm-hmm.
accommodations.
Mm-hmm.
I have women who need some more time to bond with their children. So, I think just knowing what your rights are is important. Um, what we see a lot with pregnancy discrimination claims is that employers, they're savvy, right? They're not going to necessarily terminate my client while she's out on leave or like the day she
Mm-hmm.
comes back. So they give it some time and they start coming up with some kind of, performance deficiencies or some kind of
Right.
way to kind of paper trail
Mm-hmm.
why she will be terminated or why she is terminated. So, we look at the timing of things. We look at, okay, well, before she went out on leave, she was an exemplary employee. She had been there for 10 years, no issues. And now, the only thing that has changed is, she had a baby and
Right.
there is this idea that maybe she's not going to be giving 100% to her job anymore because she's, leaving at 5 o'clock every day as
Right.
opposed to
Right.
before, you know, working those late night hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that that's so unfortunate for women. And I remember like just, being in places where sometimes but I remember being at good companies that said, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have a lactation room. So we need to build a lactation space or for mothers coming back because at the time there was just, like no people there. It was a small
Right.
group. And so I think like, when you have these situations where people are showing up in the right way to help mothers, because I think that's one of the things that is quite interesting anytime there is dealing with pregnancy. And I can recall from one job that I was in, a couple of jobs actually, but where someone within the company already may have already been working there, but they were interested in a different job or they were as a contractor, but they wanted a full-time job. And they went through the process and got the job. And then maybe like month later, they were like, oh, and I'm pregnant.
Mhm.
And, and I remember the person saying to me, "Well, it's not that I didn't wanna tell you, it's just I didn't know how the company would react." And I was like, "Well, the company can't discriminate against you for being pregnant. Like, you've been apparently pregnant all this time and doing the job, and we didn't know." So, like, I mean, I get that, but is that a sort of weird situation? Like, what should people do in that case? Should they not say anything? Should they say something? Like, what?
I mean, I think every situation is different, right? Like everybody's
Mhm.
backs are different, but I mean, look, the company is not allowed to not offer you the job or the
Right.
promotion or
Yeah.
terminate you because of your pregnancy. I have a lot of clients that don't want to disclose it because they are fearful that if they do, that they won't get that promotion, right? In the example you said.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's, I have a close friend who um is in transition between jobs. She's like 6 months pregnant and she's applying for jobs right now.
Mhm.
And she told me that she's not telling the people that she's pregnant. And I was like, that is completely fine. You could wait till you get the job offer and then you can inform them of your pregnancy.
Mhm.
And then I have other clients who I would, who want to make sure that they inform their employer during that time so that they can arrange for the accommodations and have, like, a later start date. So, I mean, I don't think I could tell someone one way or the other what they should do. I
Right.
think everyone is different.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you going into that because I do think there are people I've seen it more times than not where people are like, even with some people I know who are like, "Yep, I'm pregnant and I'm applying and, blah blah blah." Or some people who are like, "Well, I can't apply because I'm like, "Yeah, you
Yeah,
can. You have to work
right.
too." I mean, and it's
Exactly.
yeah. Like I think like if you are showing up and you're like, visibly pregnant, then you just have a you have a conversation about it, right? Like,
Right, and
yeah.
if there's someone that they really wanna hire you because of your skills, then a good company will wait, right? They will say, "No
Exactly.
problem," like, "We really wanted you to start in January, but, like, we will gladly try and figure something out for a few months, and you could start in,
Mhm.
like, May," right? Like, that's what a good company can do. Obviously, look, there's certain positions that require an immediate need,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's different.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Awesome. All right, so I know that you've represented some high profile industries, with, pretty intense power dynamics. So what mindset shift, helps women to move from feeling powerless to taking informed action?
Well, I think what I find is when clients allow me to make an external complaint for them, meaning like my law firm drafts a complaint, sends it to the company,
Mm.
and we try and help my clients sometimes behind the scenes.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Sometimes puts the power back in their hands. They don't feel like they complained internally and that they have like a scarlet letter on them and that
Right,
everyone in HR knows about it and there's a big investigation
right.
there.
Yeah.
Um, so, sometimes I feel like at that point, particularly if my clients want like a confidential resolution, they don't want to go to court, they
Mhm,
don't want a public filing. There's a lot of value and a lot of I guess, leverage my clients have
mm.
pre-public filing. So, I guess if I don't know if that answers your question, but I think having clients feel like they are able to have say in how the resolution goes. Not everyone wants a public lawsuit. A lot of my clients,
Right,
particularly the ones who have been sexually harassed, just want the employer to have some kind of accountability and just want to be compensated for what they've been through. That's what lawyers are able to help with. And they get to have a say if the case resolves or doesn't resolve and what it could possibly resolve for.
right. Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Awesome, awesome. Well, fantastic. This has been so insightful, Brittany, and I think this conversation will help a lot of people because, you just never know what people are going through behind, in the workplaces, behind the scenes. So I think the info that you've given us today is very helpful. So tell us how women how people can work with you and how can they connect to you?
Sure. So I'm licensed in New York. But our office has attorneys that work out of Florida, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. So, you know, there's other lawyers that can help at my firm, but you can find me on my website, Brittany Stevens at phillipsandassociates.com. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. You can find me under Brittany Stevens Alper. And my email is directly on my website. I think it's also on my LinkedIn. You can message me there and hopefully I can offer some guidance and see if I can help.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are going to transition to three things with Brittany. Going to ask you three more questions that helps our audience get to know you better. The first one is a two-parter. How do you start and end the day?
Oh, well, I mean, when I think about that, it's just with my kids.
Mhm.
The first thing I hear is my kids waking me up in the morning. It's like the best way to wake up and kind of already gets me to feel some kind of less of guilt that I am in the office all day. And having that time with them in the morning is like essential for me to be able to do what I do. It really like grounds me. And yeah, I end my day with my family, my kids, and trying to give myself lots of me time, whether that's watching a show with my husband or, you know, reading a book.
Awesome. I love it. And what's a current goal or intention that you're focused on?
I really want to, part of what I'm doing at my firm right now is I'm like have a lot of younger associates that I am helping train and mentor. And it's such an important part of my practice and my day to day. I want to help build, my associates' confidence and have them understand that they can help manage their own caseloads and do more of like the heavy lifting in their cases. A lot of junior associates at law firms do a lot of like the grunt work. So I
Mhm.
spend a lot of time trying to expand what they're doing to really have them be like the best possible lawyers that they can be.
Yeah. Awesome. Love that. And the last question is, where are you currently finding inspiration?
Ooh, these are like really great questions. Um, this is going to sound very generic, but I genuinely mean it. It's like, honestly, my clients give me such strength. They come forward and they have such courage,
Mhm.
and they, you know, risk so much by making these complaints. Some of them have a lot to lose. They're living paycheck to paycheck, and coming forward with a complaint means that they may not be getting that paycheck at the end of the week. So, I am constantly in awe of how strong and resilient and courageous my clients are. And it really just makes so many other things just seem unimportant in life, hearing what they have been through,
Mhm.
and what they are doing to move past it.
Mhm. Mhm. Awesome. All right. I promise this is the last question, but first, I wanted to say, Brittany, thank you so much for coming to the show again and sharing this really helpful and needed information with our community. But before I let you go, I have to ask you, what are three things the listeners or watchers can take away from today's conversation?
I'd say number one is um, I think complaining internally to the company or speaking externally to a lawyer is such an important part of this process. It puts the company on notice. You're not only protecting yourself, but you're protecting a lot of women or men moving forward. I can't tell you how many times I have been in a case litigating it, and I find out that, my client wasn't the only one that came forward. There's been multiple other filed cases against the harasser. And in
Mm.
that case, the damage is just so much more egregious. We call them punitive damages because now the company had been previously put on notice.
Right. Yeah.
I'd also say, don't worry if you don't have direct evidence of your discrimination. Your testimony is evidence. You being able to tell your story is evidence. People get nervous about complaining because they don't have the smoking gun. If you're
Mhm.
complaining to HR and you're telling them what's going on, and if you later tell that same story in a courtroom, that is evidence. And, not every particularly discrimination and sexual harassment matter has that, smoking gun piece of evidence. So just, feel good in your version of events and what happened to you, and that is enough. And then the third thing I say is, you know, finding someone who you can talk to during this process, whether it's a friend, a therapist, a loved one, really is important. A lot of times we look at contemporaneous messages, contemporaneous therapist notes to kind of help support our claims. Not only does it support your claims, but it's also just really helpful to be able to share what's been happening to you with someone else in real time. And having that support often is essential because, I can't tell you how many times I have someone who calls me on behalf of someone else because they're too scared to call them. But this was someone that my client had confided in. I encourage people to talk to someone else because maybe that's just the push they need to be able to get outside help.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brittany, again for coming and sharing with the Glow Up Girl community today. And you can always come back here in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Stay tuned, everyone. All right, welcome back, and let's thank Brittany again for joining the show. I know it's a heavy topic that we covered today, but I think it's always important to make sure that we as women understand, and also men understand our rights and what we need to do to make sure that we are protected in the workplace. So make sure you check out the links in the show notes if you want to get in touch with Brittany. All right, if you'd like to learn more about Glow Up Girl, you can visit us at glowupgirl.com and sign up for our newsletter to get tools, insights, and inspiration for your own personal glow up journey. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't. We are at Glow Up Girl, and wherever you're listening, don't forget to rate, review, and share. It helps more people find the show. And if you're sharing on social and you think we should be sharing what you're sharing, make sure you tag us so we can cheer you on and amplify your content as well. All right, and before I go, remember that free resource I mentioned at the top of the show? It's called Own Your Story, and it's a free 20-minute reflection guide that I created to help you uncover your story so you find clarity and figure out where you want to take it next. 9 prompts, totally free. Download it at glowgirl.com. Look for Own Your Story. And also, the link is in the show notes. All right. And if you're a brand looking to partner, make sure you reach out to us at hello@glowupgirl.com. All right. I want to thank Brittany again for joining us. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to listen or watch. So until next time, my friends, stay focused, fab, and glow up. Take care, everyone.